Thanks for joining me. I'm Scott, and I've got a 1966 Gretsch Corvette in cherry red. Today, we're going to put on some new tuners. We're going to put in new frets. The tuners have 2 on the right and 4 on the left. We're going to do a fretboard divot surgery. We're going to pin the floating bridge. All in a day's work. And lastly, we're going to clean some parts of it and put in a new bone nut. And I'll take you through the whole process step by step. First, I want to save you the boredom of pulling the frets. I already did that. Now I'm going over the fretboard with 80 grit sandpaper on a block. This way I can see which divots sand out and which divots are big enough to take some donor wood. This method has been around for a while, but I've recently seen Doug Proper, the guitar specialist, share one of the repairs he did on Instagram, and I'm going to share it here on YouTube. It's the same technique, just a different platform. First, I pull out the celluloid inlays. I do that by heating the fretboard with a 250 watt heat lamp. It gets pretty hot, probably about 170, 190 degrees before the glue releases. Problem with the heat lamp is it can tend to warp the celluloid. Next time, I might try steaming the celluloid with a wet rag and a soldering iron. But they were reusable. I ended up reinstalling all 3 of the dots that I pulled out. So that worked out good. This is taking wood from a donor piece of rosewood. This is held in my Total Vise number 7. Okay, here's the donor piece again. Here's the preparing the fretboard to take the donor piece. Okay, it's going to go right there. Alright, let's see here. I got some gel super glue. Spread that around. You're going to get this guy in place. And we're going to take a piece of Mylar that's been got some wax on it. But I'm also going to shoot accelerator. I'm gonna use a flat piece, just kind of push it down into place and hold it and squish it. And that's it. That is a wood gouge repair. I have to sand it smooth, but there's at least 5 or 6 more deep ones. And I think we can probably live with a couple of the smallers, but these deep ones in the middle, these 3 and that, yeah. Do about 6, 7 more of these. I might come in here and do a little bit of chiseling. Well, mostly I'm going to do some sanding. Now the sanding block didn't get down to the bottom of each divot, so what I'm doing here is I'm scoring it, breaking up all that oil and dirt, because the CA glue doesn't want to stick to dirt and oil. And then I'm going to clean that out. You'll see me, I like to use a regular old cheap paper towel to clean that out with some naphtha. Again, it's CA glue, a divot or a gouge from a donor piece. Hit the mylar with a little accelerator and paste wax and press it in. If you see me using a Q-tip to clean it out there, I realized that was a bad idea after a while because Q-tips can get a little fuzzy. So can Viva brand paper towels. So use cheap paper towels to clean it. Clean the divot. If you're trying this at home, clean your divots before you press in your gouge. So it's a lot of rinse, lather, and repeat. There was, I think I counted 7 big old divots. Sometimes after I sand the area, I'll also use a little thin super glue and rosewood dust around the edges of the divots if there's a void or a gap. And then sometimes you'll see me using a chisel. That gets me a head start on the sanding. I like to take 80 grit sandpaper wrapped around a small 1/4 inch thick piece of red oak. Red oak is no joke, guys. I think the sanding blocks I use are pecan wood. Yeah, the tree isn't just good for nuts. No, I think this wood is hickory, but a lot of times at the lumber yard they'll call it pecan or hickory. A lot of sanding. You want to sand with the grain because you want to keep the radius true to the original. One last gouge and we're ready to reinstall the inlays. That's me cleaning it with naphtha. See how it flashes off real quick? That's my understring fretboard leveler, or fret leveler. I'm using it on a fretboard. You can use peel and stick tape, whatever grit you need to use. When you're using it on frets, you'd probably want to use 220 or 320. I'm using 80 grit. 80 grit for the fretboard. Right here I'm doing some grain. I noticed the donor wood didn't have as much grain as the surrounding, so I'm making some little slits in it, little pores. Make it blend in. This first hole was a little too deep already, which I didn't account for. I wish I would have filled it in. But either way, I had to get it back to where it was 7 millimeters again. CA glue. And see that, how that one's sitting in there a little crooked? There's nothing I could do about it once it was in. I came back later and I fixed it with I used some G-Flex epoxy on top of one of these inlays and built it back up to the proud of the surface and then scraped it back. It ended up looking really good. So the new frets are in. They're 80 thousandths wide and 40 thousandths tall. On my Gretsch Country Gentleman video, I did 50 thousandths tall for the main part of the fretboard and 40 thousandths at the very end of the fretboard. Okay, here's that StewMac snap file with the perpendicular teeth. This is the fret beveling file from the Brown's Guitar Company in Michigan. By the way, I kind of wonder where the Gretsch guitar was made. I want to say it was made in Rhode Island. Clean that with a vacuum. I want to make sure the fret dust doesn't get on the neck rest. That can scratch up the lacquer in no time at all. I had one high fret. I think it was the 9th fret. I'm going to take that one down before I level the whole area. Just dress that high fret real quick. Checking it periodically with a rocker, a fret rocker, till it's level with the 2 on either side. Now I'm going to create a little fall away at the top of the fretboard. That way we'll have less string rattle while we're playing them leads up there at the 12th fret, 15th fret. Go over the whole area with some 220 and some 320 grit sandpaper. Get some of those file marks out of there. Then I'll hit it with my 3-corner file. Start to bring that crown back to the top of the frets. If you use a 3-corner file to crown your frets, it leaves them smooth enough where you can use this technique that I'm going to show you here in a second. I got it from Mike McConville. But right there, that's the StewMac Diamond crowning file, 300 grit. This is the method I was talking about, using a scrub block to bring the crowns of all the frets the same. So each fret will have the same shaped crown. I do 600 grit all the way up to 2000 grit. And if you go through all the grits, 600, 800, 1000, 1500, 2000, you're all good to go. Sometimes the glue squeezes out the fret slot and it needs a little cleanup after a few days. I use a chisel. I lied earlier at the beginning of the video. I said that was all in a day's work. This actually took a good week or two. Next you can see there's some real deep, there's some voids under, basically in the fret slots. So I'm going to fill those in. I'm holding this stick underneath a heat lamp to get it warm. And then I'm going to take the filler and just push it into that. Rinse, lather, and repeat. All the way down the fretboard. Whenever there's a little gap there, I'm going to fill it in. And that will be a nice look. Now that filler cleans up with naphtha. Oh man, I got a lot of cleaning to do on this job also. There is some sticky stuff on this neck. Finger grease. See what I mean? I'm using a little Barasso. Barasso! Barasso is like a coarse compound, you know. That's actual gross stuff from someone's body. And whenever you get this color coming off a guitar, you know it's a mixture of cigarette, tobacco, and palm sweat. Really bad. Okay, here we got the shellac pad, and here we got the shellac. Just going to concentrate it up here. Give it a little wipey wipe. Working on putting these new Grover Stay Tight tuners on here for him, and I came across this old Trade Secrets article, which is probably the first time a lot of people heard of this gouge technique that I used on the fretboard. And this is Yasuhiko, I think, was the guy that was using that technique that I used. You can see it here on this mahogany wood, just like I did on the rosewood. But and they also talk about faking wood, which I did a little bit of on that. I put in some fake grain lines, but they're talking about, you know, graining with pencils and you know, just painting in the grain lines, which is a lot like you see on the Patreon and on Iris Carr's Instagram. She's a violin luthier, but she does that a lot. Anyways, the old Trade Secrets from Stu Mac was handy. Of course, I heard it on Ian Davlin's Patreon first, and then looked back and was like, oh man, they've been doing this for years. Probably been doing it for a long
roughing
time.
of a nut, so I got a lot of nut dust over here. I'm going to treat this fretboard. I just sent a photo to the client, and he said, don't you think you should put some oil on that fretboard? He said, put some linseed oil on it. So I'm not going with straight linseed oil. I'm going with this tried and true. Kind of looks like honey. It's more substantial than just putting mineral oil on it. And I know there's a lot of guys out there that say putting anything other than just straight mineral oil is overkill on a fretboard. But I think it'd be nice to kind of fill in these spots. I mean, let's see the difference. This is the Dunlop lemon oil. We can have both. But in my past experience, I've kind of liked the way this tried and true feels after an hour. You come back and you just buff it off. Now for the bridge, I'm going to pin it down with 16th inch drill bits. And I got this idea from Stallman Guitars, Nate Wood. He's a friend of mine from the Luth group. And so I've got some 16th inch drill bits, some spare ones. I got a couple old ones, and I'm going down 16 millimeters here. Now, these are going to be hidden by the thumb wheel when it's all said and done. So I'll go right next to the post. And then I'll clean that up. I'll cut off the excess on this one, cut it to 16 millimeters, and tap it on in with a center punch. Perfect.
That felt good.
You know, if you ever get tape on an old guitar like this from the 60s, you probably want to make sure you don't just yank on the tape and pull the lacquer off with the tape. So I have naphtha on hand for this. Better be safe than sorry. There's the bridge all pinned down. Neck's all cleaned up. New frets. Fretboard repaired. New tuners. Oh, I forgot the truss rod cover. Oh! Well, we're not going to be able to plug it in and listen to this baby due to the fact that he didn't bring it with the output jack. There's no jack and the wires aren't even hooked up. But man, 1966, what a year. I mean, there's the Gretsch Corvette. We had the Beatles Revolver album come out. And we had the Pontiac GTO. What style. 1966. Shall we all just kick back and reminisce? Yes. Thanks for hanging out till the end. I appreciate you tuning in and subscribing and sharing and liking and all that stuff. We'll catch you later.